Shortly after Japan surrendered at the end of World War II, on September 2, 1945, Ho Chi Minh declared North Vietnam as the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. However, the territory technically still belonged to the French. The French fought with North Vietnam for 9 years until 1954, when they agreed to divide the country along the 17th parallel at the Geneva Conference. They also agreed that in 2 years, an election will be held between both the North and South in order to decide a single leader that would unify the split countries. South Vietnam, as well as the United States, feared Ho Chi Minh, the communist North Vietnamese leader, would easily win the election. They then refused to honor the terms discussed at the conference and braced for war. President Eisenhower attempted to support the South not from a military standpoint, but rather an advisory standpoint, by placing 650 military advisors in South Vietnam to train the indigenous army. As a result, the United States had become involved in another fight against communism. The next extremely significant event to occur was the turning point in U.S. involvement in the Vietnam conflict. The U.S. destroyer Maddox was ordered to monitor North Vietnam naval activity near the Gulf of Tonkin. In doing so, the ship was attacked by 3 North Vietnamese PT boats. Requesting air support and evading the attacks, the Maddox escapes with 0 casualties, while sinking one of the PT boats and damaging the remaining 2. The Maddox then quickly joined up with the Turner Joy destroyer. 2 days later, both the Maddox and Turner Joy opened fire on what they believed to be high-speed vessels. Aircrafts were scrambled, but the North Vietnamese ships were nowhere to be found. This encounter resulted in the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, which gave President Johnson authorization to use whatever military force necessary without an official declaration of war. U.S. involvement from there on out turned from an advisory standpoint into an intense combat situation. After years of fighting, the U.S. decided they did not want to continue fighting a war that seemed to drag on with no end in sight. They forced North Vietnam to the negotiation table with a series of strong bombings. This brought about the Paris Peace Accords, which were signed on January 27, 1973. It called for a complete U.S. withdrawal, a ceasefire, and the return of U.S. prisoners of war. However, both the North and South continued to violate the agreement. The fighting would resume shortly, but with only financial support from the United States, South Vietnam did not stand a chance. The capital of Saigon was eventually overrun, forcing the surrender of the South Vietnamese on April 30, 1975. The war was finally over, and the bitter outcome was foreshadowed throughout the conflict as U.S. troops maintained an attitude of disgust at the purposes of why they were fighting. The United States did all they could to prevent the fall of Vietnam to communism, but in the end, North Vietnam wouldn't accept no for an answer to its desires of unification. The United States clearly had no desire to re-enter the war.